Hello and welcome to the John Ark Show. Today's episode is called The $10 billion New York Real Estate Scam. Before we begin, I want to encourage you to subscribe, like, comment, and follow us. We're going to have a lot of great celebrity interviews coming up, so I encourage you to click on that notification bell so that you can be updated every time we upload a new episode. I'd also like to tell you about a service called HollywoodIsCalling.com. It allows you to purchase live phone calls from real celebrities. There are more than 100 celebs to choose from. A live 15-second call is $19.95 and a live 30-second call is $29.95. So give it a try. HollywoodIsCalling.com. Now, let's get started. There is a massive new $10 billion real estate scam that has been discovered in New York and Los Angeles, and we're going to tell you all about it. Whenever you buy, sell, or rent real estate in New York or LA or some of the other major cities, most people want to know what the square footage of the property is that they're considering buying or renting. Whether you're thinking of renting retail, office space, or you're considering buying something, the amount of square footage that is being offered helps you calculate and compare the value of the real estate that you're being offered. Most of the time, people will just ask the broker for the square footage, and the broker just repeats whatever the information is on the listing. If your broker told you a square footage number, then most people just accepted that number and went with it. But then the pandemic hit, and the real estate market in major cities like New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, San Francisco, and others was subjected to enormous stresses. That's because buyers, sellers, and renters were all put under enormous stress. When you subject people to enormous financial pressure, then something happens to them. They begin to question things and look for options and wonder about what's really going on. And that's what people who were desperate in the real estate sector began to do. People who were shopping for real estate space in New York would walk into a listing that was represented at a specific square footage, like say 1,000 square feet. And they'd ask themselves, is this really 1,000 square feet of space? Or is the landlord trying to rip me off? Now, in the past, if you wanted to confirm the actual square footage of a space, you would have to break out some measuring tape and start doing some actual measurements and calculations. Doing something like that could take up to an hour per listing, and most buyers or renters just don't have that kind of time to waste. But then something interesting happened. Cell phone manufacturers started selling smartphones with something called LiDAR. Now, LiDAR stands for light detection and ranging. And what it does is it sends out pulses of laser light to measure ranges and distances across a room or a space. And then you can have software calculate the dimensions of the room or building fairly quickly. As you can imagine, people with smartphones that possess LiDAR scanners who were shopping for properties began to use their LiDAR to confirm the dimensions of the place they were looking at renting or buying. And guess what they found? Some of these people very quickly determined that their sleazy landlords were overstating the size of the properties they were trying to rent to them or to sell to them. So if you have a landlord telling you that the retail space they're showing you is 1,000 square feet, but in reality it's only 900 square feet, then they are ripping you off by 10% a month or a year. Why is that a big deal? Well, let's do the math. Retail space in New York can go anywhere from $40 per square foot to $2,000 a square foot on Park Avenue. Let's keep things simple, and let's say that you're renting a small retail shop for $5,000 a month based on its 400 square foot size, or at least that's what the landlord tells you the size is. Now, let's say that you remeasure the dimensions and you realize that the actual size was 360 square feet because the landlord lied. He overstated the square footage by 10% or 40 square feet. This means that you've been overpaying each month for that space by $500 a month, which means your landlord is ripping you off by $6,000 a year, And if you have a 5-year lease, then that means he's pocketing $30,000 of your money over the term of that lease. He's just stealing from you. If this landlord has 10 such places and he rips each one of them off by 10%, then that means he's stealing at least $300,000 a year from his tenants. Now, 10% is just a theoretical amount for this example, but if a landlord can lie about 10% of their square footage, then he can easily lie and say and exaggerate even more. He can say it's 12% or 15% or even 20% larger than it actually is. Now you're talking about some very serious money being stolen from tenants each month. So what happens when you bring this to the attention of landlords who are overstating their actual footage? Well, some of them claim ignorance and some of them just say it was an estimate. But here's the problem with that. It's very rare that landlords understate the amount of retail space they rent to you by accidentally giving you 1,000 square feet for a property that's really 900 square feet in size. That doesn't appear to be happening very often. It's far more likely that they will overstate the dimensions of the space, and that's the problem. What about the dimensions of homes being bought and sold? Can you trust those square footage numbers? Not always, and here's why. Back in the day when real estate appraisers checked the dimensions of homes, they would physically measure it to confirm the square footage. Then, as time moved on, the new appraiser wouldn't actually measure the square footage of that same home he was appraising. He would just go by the numbers provided by the home's previous appraiser. See where I'm going with this? So if a previous appraiser lied or got it wrong, then the square footage number was just copied and pasted by each subsequent appraiser. But now a lot of banks and buyers have an automated or virtual appraisal done on those same properties. They don't send up physical human appraisers out like they used to. That's where they just look up the previous appraiser on the computer, or they have a drone go out and look at the house from the outside to make sure it hasn't been burnt down and that half of it isn't missing. And from that information, they extrapolate what the square footage is and what the appraisal should be. The problem with that is that numbers like that can be fuzzy or inaccurate at best, and sometimes they can just repeat the lies someone else told about the square footage years ago. So now we have people with smartphones walking around taking LiDAR scans of the properties that they're looking at, and they are finding that sometimes those numbers aren't real. Now, what about people who've already purchased or rented properties based on what they were told the square footage was, and they find out that they were lied to? What will those people do? Well, I suspect some of them will hire lawyers and go after the sellers or the landlords or the real estate agents. Now, I'm sure a lot of those people, once they get sued, will claim that they were simply providing the square footage information based on what someone told them previously. So everyone is going to try and pass the buck. That means that the courts will have to decide. But hopefully, when the dust settles, the real estate industry will come up with more accurate ways of providing true square footage measurements of the homes and retail spaces that they are selling or renting to people. And now with this new smartphone LiDAR technology, that should be relatively easy for each broker to do with each property that they're going to be listing. Confirming it is not that difficult. So with that, I want to thank our viewers for watching and tell you that we're going to have more great celebrity interviews and breaking news stories coming up in the future. So we want to encourage you to subscribe to our channel and click on that notification bell so you can get notified every time we post a new story. Thank you for watching.